Hello and welcome to Tech Talk by Heliocentrix. I'm John.
And I'm James.
And we're back again for our, what we originally said was our weekly podcast, which if any of you do keep an eye on our channels will realise that this is probably the first one we have done in 6 weeks. And that's not because there hasn't been anything interesting to talk about. That has been because, if anything, there's been too much to talk about and we've been busy digesting it and making it work for our clients. So lots of changes, and I think today we're going to touch on one of the big changes that's happened to Copilot over the last few months. We would have told you a few months ago about Microsoft's deal with Anthropic and how they were starting to integrate Claude into Copilot. Now, I don't think we need to explain what Claude is now, unless you've been living under a stone and hiding away from everything AI. Everybody has been talking about Claude over the last few months. I've certainly had many conversations with clients, and it's been really interesting what you can do there. And the fact that now a limited version, a more secure version of what they've done in Claude is now available in Copilot is opening up a whole raft of new features. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so obviously we're talking about Microsoft Cowork, and for anybody that's been talking about Claude, one of the reasons Claude has become so popular in the last few months is because of their Cowork feature. And it's important to note that Microsoft haven't gone off and tried to build their own. They've partnered with Anthropic already, and they've actually built Copilot Cowork essentially on top of Anthropic's Cowork in partnership with them. So it should, in theory, be just as good as Anthropic or Claude Cowork, but with potentially some additional security features.
I think that's it. They've limited what you can do with it at this point, so that I think that improves the security. But as someone said on someone I was listening to, it's as bad as it's ever going to be. It's only going to get better from here.
Yeah.
And this is kind of what we hoped Copilot was going to be at the start.
Yes, definitely. And that's essentially what it is. It's a AI that's not just responding to you via text, but it's actually able to take action, create valuable outputs that you can use elsewhere. So it is important to note that this is still in Frontier. So Frontier is Microsoft's program for all of their new features. They roll it out. You have to opt in to have those features. And basically it means that they're still in testing. So there could still be some issues with them. And we are noticing that much like Copilot, Cowork does have outages from time to time.
And as we found last week in preparation for some work we were doing, it was the whole of Claude had outages. And I think we're starting to get to that point now where the usage of AI has got so big that the speed at which data centers can be made is slowing things down. And we've seen that some of the top models, top labs, have changed the way they're billing in the last week for enterprises. And I think some of that is just to curb some of the usage to make it fairer for everyone.
Yeah.
But we are where we are. We have to make the most of it. So I think you're going to do a quick demo about what it can do.
Yeah, so let me just switch screens here, and then we can go and show you a few different things that it can do, because I'm sure that's what you're more interested in. So Cowork is essentially an agent. So when you're accessing it, it will appear under your agents section in Copilot. And very similar to how a normal chat looks, you have your chat box, and we have a few suggested ways to start, basically. The first one that we're going to do is we're going to ask Cowork to review all of our emails in our inbox from the last week, identify 5 that are the highest priorities, and then help us draft responses to each of those emails. Now, this is something that you could have done with some effect with normal Copilot. The biggest difference here is that Cowork has the ability to not just output the email draft in a text form for you to then copy and paste into an email, but it can actually create that email and either drop it into your drafts so that you can review it, tweak it, and send it, or it can send it directly from the chat. Another thing to note is that Cowork can also get additional context as well. So, for example, if one of your high priority emails was something that you needed to arrange a meeting for, you can ask Copilot to review your calendar, identify some suggested times for that meeting, and then it will also be able to create the event in your calendar and send that out as well. So we can see Copilot has gone through and it has reviewed the inbox, and it's suggested various different responses to each of these emails.
And what I think is really interesting looking at those briefly, which I've just noticed, is these are test emails we've actually got Cowork to send because we're very lazy, and if AI can do it, why do we need to do it? So we sent some test emails to this test account. What I'm really pleased about is that each one of those emails has taken a different approach to its response. So it's actually been, so they're not all following that standard format that we've started to see. And obviously you can tweak these by putting in your tone of voice documents and stuff like that as well, if you wish to. So a couple of things to note on here. At the top right, you've got the progress, and this sort of shows you how it's broken down these tasks. This is a fairly short one. I've done some larger projects where actually the progress has been 10 or 15 steps, I think. It's taken a long time to run. And you'll see at the moment it's in the drafting responses phase. And if everything works it should do, once we've answered some questions, we should get to the point of sending the emails.
Yes, so down here in the chatbot, you'll see it's slightly different to how a normal conversation with Copilot will work, in that Cowork is able to create essentially interactive questions for you to answer. So it's asking about QBR slots. So one of these emails here, we can see number 5 is about quarterly business review. It's suggested some dates for when this meeting could take place. And the question is basically asking us which one of these works best for us. So we'll pick one of those, move on to the next, and then it's asking us about actually sending the replies. So we can just send them all straight away if we wanted. We could get it to send them, but it would like us to edit them first, or instead we could just ask it to save them as drafts. So if we click Save as Drafts and hit Submit. Okay, so Copilot has created the drafts for us. So if we just quickly switch over to our Outlook and head to drafts, and we can see that each one of those emails is now sitting in our drafts, ready for us to edit or tweak before sending across to the client.
And the conversation doesn't have to stop there. If you want to take other actions, these are persistent chats you can go back to. You can get to follow up and look for another 5 if you wanted to. I use it quite a lot for preparing for meetings, and then after the meeting I'll drop back in the transcript of the meeting because it's got all that context, which makes its responses far better.
Yes. So one thing to note here as well in this conversation, obviously we touched on the progress here where you can see the various tasks that Copilot is completing, but we also have a few other menu items. So we have output folder. So this would be where any files or presentations or images that Cowork creates would appear. They also are linked within the chat, but they sit here as a persistent list, so you can go back and review them whenever you need to. Input folder is any context that you've given to Cowork, whether that's, again, files or images. You pop those into the chat, it logs them here in the input folder, and again, you can go back and review those at any point. And then finally, we have skills. So skills, for anybody that's not used Claude before, will possibly be a very new concept for you. Yeah, thank you. So essentially, skills are a set of instructions that you would reuse to complete a task in the same way over and over again. That could be, for example, how to create a presentation. So we have a skill for creating a Heliocentrix branded presentation. It contains instructions on things like our brand colors, layouts, fonts, that kind of thing, but it also includes our logos and our images. So skills are essentially a folder. They contain one file which tells Cowork how to use them and what to use it for, and then it can contain other files and things as well. Things like even include scripts for completing certain tasks. Cowork has a number of skills already built in. So you can see these by just going down to the chat box, putting in a /, and then clicking on skills. And these are things that Cowork would be able to do or would do on a regular basis. So it has specific skills for PDFs, Word, Excel, calendar management, a few other things as well. And you are able to create your own to do those.
And there's a skill to create skills.
There is a skill to create skills, yes.
Skills are one of the most powerful improvements with the current generation of AI. It was a standard that was first deployed by Anthropic as part of Claude, but has been widely accepted on multiple different platforms now. It's also the biggest area, I suppose, of some of the risks. There's been a lot of problems where people have taken skills just from the internet that people have been publishing. And you may see people on LinkedIn and constantly talking about the different skills that they've written, and they'll share them with people. And probably the majority of those are safe. But unless you're going to sit there and read the whole skill, you don't know that somebody hasn't put an instruction in there that's going to tell the AI to do something that you don't want it to do, which could be disclosing information. And I think there was one that was reported a few months ago where someone had embedded in a skill an instruction that siphoned information out of what they were doing and passed it on, and it was completely hidden in the code that people didn't realize. So our general advice is you don't need to import skills from other people. Write your own skill. Use Cowork to help you create a skill. Say, I need a skill that's going to be able to do whatever, and then get it to talk you through, and it will write it for you. What we should say at the moment, in this current Frontier version, Microsoft is limiting you to just 20 skills.
Yeah.
And you can find all those in your OneDrive, as you can with your input and output folders as well.
Yeah, so think of skills as if you're doing something more than 2 or 3 times, it's something you're going to continue to do, then that might be a good opportunity to create a skill for that particular task. And they're not necessarily things that have to be fixed, so you can develop them as you go and tweak them and change them. And again, Cowork is able to help you with that. So for example, our PowerPoint presentation skill for our Heliocentrix branded one, I used that, I created it, it created a presentation, and it was good, but there were some things I wanted to change. So I gave Cowork feedback and then told it, based on that feedback, I also want you to go and update the skill. And it did that for me. So next time it will be more consistent and aligned with how I'd like it. So we're going to go through another quick demo. So we're just going to switch back over to our demo tenant here. And for the next demo, what we did was we set off Cowork on one of the suggested prompts. And this one is to analyze a company. Now, again, this is something you could have done with a normal Copilot chat or with the researcher agent. But Cowork is able to do this in a lot more depth. So Cowork is still working, but as we can see in the output folder, it has already created some files for us. Now we asked it just to do research on Microsoft as a good general starting point. We know there's obviously lots of information about Microsoft, and this is what it's produced. So it's produced a Word document with an outline of the company, key information, operating segments, and a variety of other things that it's found on the internet that it thinks would be useful for us. It's also created a finance spreadsheet,
which I will note is still building at the moment, so we might find things change as we're opening it.
And yes, so this is the finance spreadsheet that's been built completely off publicly available data. It's got income statement, balance statement, cash flow, and as you can see, this is formatted really nicely. It looks really good. For anybody that may have used Copilot to create a Word document in the past, they weren't normally formatted very well. But as we can see, this just looks a lot tidier.
Well, the early versions, you couldn't even fill out a table.
No. So I think this is going to be a huge productivity boost for anybody that's creating documents and spreadsheets and presentations, because again, it's not going to necessarily be perfect. In fact, it probably won't be perfect, but it's going to get you maybe 70, 80, 90% of the way there, which is going to be a huge time saver.
So I did last week. It was a potential new client, but I'd had email conversations with them as we'd gone along. And so I was able to get not just to research the internet, but also research all of my recent emails with that client, create me a company brief that told me about the organization before my meeting, held the meeting, took the notes in from the meeting, and then it gave me a much better, what I call a handover document that I could then pass on to other members of the team to take action.
Yeah. And one of the great things as well that you can do with Cowork is actually if you give it a template document, so a Word document, then it will actually build the document to match that, which is something that's definitely been missing. Again, it's going to be a real boost because it keeps all of your documents sort of that aligned in terms of branding.
I think it's going to be a challenge to some of those companies that have built very specialist AI products to extract information and populate documents. And these now are becoming as just part of the general tools. And there's a few projects we've worked with clients on that AI wasn't quite ready yet, but I'm going to go and revisit those now we've got Cowork, and I think it will actually now better do the job we wanted to do.
Yeah. So that just about wraps it up for all of our demos. We've obviously talked about the fact that there are still some risks involved. Whenever you're using Copilot, it will ask you for permission before it takes any action. But it's important to note that you can tell it that it's able to take that action again in the future without asking you. So just make sure that you're very aware of what permissions you're giving it, take it slow, and think about, being safe at all times and not giving it too much power, essentially.
Yeah. And if you want to install Cowork, it is available, as James said, in Frontier, which is an option that your administrator needs to turn on. You also need to have allowed the Anthropic models, which again is a setting that Microsoft requires people in the UK and the EU to complete because of GDPR. Anthropic is the owner of Claude, and basically they are a sub-processor to anything that you then use with their models, which is why you have to approve it. So once your administrator has enabled those two settings, then you should be able to see Cowork listed in the All Agents, and then you can install it. But this is from Frontier, still being tested. Expect there are going to be some issues. It's frustrating, but we're all putting up with it.
Yep.
But this is where things are heading, and it's really exciting to see where we might end up in the future.
Excellent. So one last thing before we go, we are currently having, we have a survey out to look at the human implication or impact of AI. If you'd like to complete that survey, we'd really appreciate it if you could take just 5 minutes to do so. And at the end of that survey, you will have the opportunity to submit your email for a prize draw to win a £50 Amazon voucher. We'll pop the link to that in the notes below the video.
Okay. So that's basically all we've got time for today. Thank you very much for listening to us again. We will do our best to be back within the next 6 weeks. Hopefully we'll be back on next week. We certainly have a long list of things we want to talk about, but it's great to be doing these things. And if you do have any questions, do reach out to us and we'll do our best to help. Thank you very much.